The night was cold. The wind moved through the trees and the ground was wet from old rain. A human man walked alone on the empty road. His name was Daniel. He carried a small bag on his shoulder, and his jacket was old and torn. Daniel was used to being alone. Life had taken away his family long ago, and now he lived quietly, far from the busy cities. That night he wanted only to reach his small cabin before the frost grew stronger. But as he passed an old stone wall, he heard something. A sound, soft, weak, almost like a cry. He stopped. The road was dark, the moon half hidden by clouds. For a moment he thought the sound was the wind, but then he heard it again. It was not the wind. Daniel looked around. His heart beat faster. He told himself to keep walking, to not get involved. But something inside pushed him to search. Slowly he stepped off the road and walked toward the sound. Behind the wall, in the shadow of a broken tree, he saw her. A girl, but not a normal girl. Her skin was pale, with a faint silver glow, almost like moonlight on water. Her hair was long, tangled, and shining with strange colors, blue and green when the moonlight touched it. She wore no coat, only thin clothes torn in many places. Her body shook, her hands clutched around herself. She was not human. Daniel froze. He had heard stories of aliens passing through distant lands. Some people said they were dangerous. Others said they were lost travelers, trying to survive. But he had never seen one so close. The girl lifted her head, her eyes opened slowly, glowing faintly yellow in the dark. She looked at him, weak but sharp, as if she could see right through him. Daniel felt his mouth go dry. He wanted to step back, but he did not move. Her eyes held him in place. For a long moment, silence covered them both. The wind whistled, the leaves moved, and the cold wrapped around like a blanket of ice. The girl tried to speak. Her lips opened, but only a broken sound came out. She was shivering badly now. Daniel could see her breath like mist in the air. She looked close to death. Daniel's hand touched his bag. Inside was a wool blanket. He always carried it for long walks, to keep himself warm if he had to sleep outside. He pulled it halfway out, then stopped. Why should I help her, he thought. She's not human. What if she's dangerous? But another thought came. She is freezing. She will die if I walk away. Could I live with that? Daniel sighed. His heart and his mind fought inside him. At last he stepped closer. His boots pressed against the wet ground, loud in the quiet night. The girl's eyes followed his every move. When he knelt in front of her, she tensed as if ready to run, but she had no strength. Her hands shook, her body leaned against the stone wall. Daniel slowly opened the blanket. Here, he said softly, take this. His voice sounded strange in the silence. He had not spoken to anyone in days. He reached out, holding the blanket toward her. The girl stared at it, then at him. She did not move. For a second, Daniel thought she would refuse. Then, with trembling fingers, she reached out. She touched the blanket lightly, as if testing if it was real. Then she pulled it around her shoulders. The moment she did, something strange happened. Her eyes glowed brighter. The silver of her skin seemed to shine under the blanket. Daniel stepped back, shocked. He had only wanted to give her warmth, but it felt like something more had been unlocked. The girl whispered something in a language he did not know. The words were soft, almost like music, but broken and weak. Daniel could not understand, but he felt the weight of them. He wanted to ask who she was. He wanted to ask what she was doing there. But before he could, she looked at him. Again. This time her eyes were sharper, stronger. Daniel froze. She was not just weak. She was watching him closely, studying him. Her hand moved under the blanket as if hiding something. A knife? A tool? A weapon? Daniel's heart beat faster. Had he made a mistake? The night grew colder. The trees creaked in the wind. Far away, an owl cried. The girl leaned forward, her face pale but her eyes fierce. She whispered again, this time one word that Daniel understood. You. She did not finish. Her body trembled, her voice broke, but her eyes kept burning into him. Daniel felt fear rise inside. The blanket had changed something. He did not know what it meant, but he could not look away. The silence stretched on, heavy, dangerous. And then, from deep in the ground, Daniel felt it, a small tremor. The earth moved, only a little, but enough to make the stones near the wall shift. His eyes widened. The girl held the blanket tighter, her lips moving again, whispering words he could not understand. The faint glow around her body spread, reaching the edges of the blanket. Daniel stepped back slowly. His breath was sharp in the cold air. What have I done, he thought. The cold night was no longer just cold, it was alive. Something was happening, something he could not explain. And Daniel knew. His life would never be the same again. The ground shook again, a light tremor moving through the soil. Daniel froze. His eyes stayed locked on the alien girl. She held the blanket close around her small frame, but her body no longer looked weak. Something had changed. At first, Daniel thought the blanket was only keeping her warm, but now it seemed more like a shield, or even a key. A faint glow moved along the fabric, almost invisible, but Daniel's sharp eyes caught it. Threads of pale light ran across the wool, as if her touch had awakened something hidden. The girl lowered her head, whispering words too soft for him to catch. Her voice carried rhythm, like a chant, broken but steady. Daniel stepped back, unsure. His instincts screamed danger, yet a strange curiosity held him still. Then she moved. With a sudden, unexpected motion, the girl slid from the stone wall down to the ground. Her knees touched the wet earth, her thin hands pressing against the blanket. Daniel thought she might collapse, but instead she bent forward, almost bowing. The glow grew stronger. Daniel's breath caught. He had seen machines, he had seen fires, but never had he seen a simple blanket shine with living light. The air around her shifted, warmer than before, as if the blanket itself was burning with hidden power. "What are you doing?" Daniel whispered. The girl did not answer. Her lips kept moving, her strange words filling the silence. Daniel felt the hairs on his arms rise. The cold night seemed to step back, pushed away by whatever was happening. Even the wind slowed. For a moment, Daniel considered running. He could leave her there, return to his cabin, pretend this night had never happened. But he did not move. His feet stayed rooted, his eyes locked on the alien girl. Then she lifted her head, her glowing eyes fixed on him. Her face was pale, but her expression had changed. The weakness was fading. In its place was something harder, something sharper. She looked almost powerful. Daniel's chest tightened. She whispered one clear word this time, "Marked." The sound of it chilled him. He did not know her language, but the way she said that single word made his heart pound. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice low. No reply. Instead, her hands pressed harder to the ground. The blanket slipped from her shoulders and spread like wings around her. The glow pulsed once, like a heartbeat, then faded into the soil beneath. The earth trembled again, stronger this time. Small stones rattled. Daniel staggered back a step, fear gripping him. He wanted to shout to tell her to stop, but something in her eyes warned him not to. The girl exhaled sharply as though the act had cost her strength. Then she fell back against the wall, breathing hard. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Daniel rushed forward against his better judgment. "Hey," he said. "Are you all right?" Her hand shot out. Quick as lightning, her thin fingers caught his wrist. Her grip was weak but determined, unshakable. Daniel's breath froze in his chest. Her yellow eyes stared into his. No leave," she whispered in broken human tongue. Daniel swallowed. He tried to pull his arm free, but her grip tightened. It wasn't strength that held him. It was something else, something inside the air itself. His skin tingled where she touched him, like a current of electricity. "I don't understand," he said. The girl shook her head, her tangled hair falling across her face. She spoke again, slowly, forcing human words. "Hunters. Come." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. "Hunters?" Her gaze flickered toward the dark road, then back to him. Her voice cracked, but the fear in it was clear. "They smell me. They find me. Soon." Daniel felt ice in his veins. Hunters. She wasn't just some lost traveler. She was being chased. He glanced toward the empty road. It looked silent, harmless, but now in his mind he saw danger moving in the shadows, waiting to appear. He looked back at her. She was shaking again, but not from cold, from fear. Her fingers finally let go of his wrist, and she wrapped the blanket tightly around her once more. Daniel stood still, his mind racing. He had only wanted to help a freezing girl, but now he was caught in something much larger. The girl's eyes closed briefly. She whispered again, words too strange for him to follow. The glow under the blanket flickered one last time, then faded to nothing. The silence returned, but this time it was not peaceful. It was heavy, tense, dangerous. Daniel turned his head sharply. He thought he heard something, a faint crunch, like boots pressing against gravel. The girl's eyes snapped open. Her breathing quickened. "Da!" Neil's pulse thundered in his ears. The night no longer felt empty. Somewhere in the dark, hidden shapes were moving. He looked at her. She was weak, scared, yet there was something in her gaze, a silent plea. She had said one word that he could not forget. Hunters. And if they were near, he knew the quiet night was about to break apart. The road was silent again, but Daniel no longer felt safe. The girl's warning echoed in his mind. Hunters. He stood close to her, his breath sharp in the cold air. trying to decide what to do. Her weak body leaned against the stone wall, but her eyes stayed open, glowing faintly under the blanket. She looked like she wanted to speak again, but the words were heavy in her throat. Daniel crouched beside her. "You need to tell me," he whispered. "Who's hunting you? Why?" The girl's lips trembled. For a long moment, she said nothing. Her thin hands gripped the blanket tightly, as if the truth itself might hurt her. Then slowly, she forced herself to speak. "My name, Lyra," she whispered in broken human tongue. Daniel nodded. At least now she had a name. Lyra's eyes shifted toward the dark road again. Her voice was soft, but her words carried weight. Last. My people. Gone." Daniel's chest tightened. Last? Did she mean she was the only one left of her kind? Lyra shivered, then went on. "Hunters. Kill all. They want me. Only me now." Her voice cracked, but her eyes stayed locked on him. There was no lie in her face, only fear and truth. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. He had not asked for this. He had only tried to be kind. Yet with one blanket, he had stepped into a story far bigger than his own. Lyra's hand moved, pointing weakly at the blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "This, not just warm," she said slowly. "It answer. It hear me. It remember." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" She pressed her hand flat again. "Ain't's the wool." The faint glow flickered once more, then faded. "It is. Key. Mark. Now, you also." Daniel's stomach dropped. "Me?" Lyra nodded weakly. "Hunters. We'll see. They know now. You help me. You part of fate." Daniel felt his mouth go dry. He had never believed in destiny. He was just a man who wanted peace, a man who wanted no trouble. And yet, this alien girl was telling him his small act of kindness had tied him to her forever. He tried to pull away from the thought, but her eyes held him. They were not pleading eyes. They were the eyes of someone carrying a heavy burden. Daniel stood up and turned his head quickly. There it was again, the crunch of movement in the distance. Not the wind, not the trees. Something alive, something searching. Lyra pulled the blanket tighter. "They close," she whispered. Daniel looked down at her. She was fragile, barely able to sit straight, but she had survived this long. That meant she had strength somewhere inside. Still, she could not fight now. Not like this. "You said they killed your people," Daniel said, keeping his voice low. "Why? What do they want with you?" Lyra's eyes darkened. For the first time, he saw anger there, not at him, but at the memory she carried. "They fear us," she said slowly, struggling with the words. "We builders. We make. We heal. They want us gone. No hope left." Her voice shook, but Daniel understood. Her people had been creators, not warriors. That was why the hunters had destroyed them, out of fear, out of greed, out of hatred. Daniel clenched his fists. The world was cruel enough with humans fighting humans. But this, an entire people erased? It made his stomach turn. Lyra's hand slipped from the blanket and touched the ground weakly. "I run many nights, always cold, always fear. Then you." Her voice faded. She did not finish the thought, but Daniel understood. She had been ready to die in the cold until he gave her warmth. Daniel swallowed hard. He did not see himself as a hero, but now, whether he wanted it or not, she looked at him as if he were as the last thread keeping her alive. A new sound broke the moment. A low growl carried across the night, far but growing closer. Daniel's eyes widened. "Hunters," Lyra whispered again, her voice trembling. Daniel grabbed her arm gently. "We can't stay here." She nodded, weak but certain. Daniel helped her to her feet. She was lighter than he expected, almost weightless. Her legs shook, but she leaned against him for support. Together they moved away from the wall, back toward the dark path. The forest ahead looked endless. Every shadow felt like an enemy waiting to strike. Daniel's chest pounded, but he kept moving, one step at a time. Behind them, the growl came again, louder now, and this time, Daniel thought he saw shapes, tall, sharp, moving in the distance. Lyra clutched his arm, her eyes wide with fear. Daniel whispered to himself, "What have I gotten into?" But it was too late to turn back. The hidden past had revealed itself. She was the last of her people, hunted by enemies that would not stop until she was gone, and now, because of one blanket, he was bound to her fate. The night grew darker. The hunters were near, and Daniel knew the real chase was only beginning. The night no longer felt empty. Every shadow looked alive, every whisper of wind sounded like footsteps. Daniel held Lyra close as they moved down the dark path. Her body was weak, but her eyes kept watching the trees. She knew what was coming. Behind them, the growl grew louder. Not an animal, not a beast, something worse. Daniel's throat tightened. "How many?" he whispered. Lyra shook her head. Her voice was barely there. "More than you want." Her words made him shiver. Then from the forest, shapes began to emerge. At first only outlines, tall, thin figures with sharp edges that seemed to cut the night itself. Then the moon broke free from the clouds, and Daniel saw them clearly. The hunters. Their bodies were covered in black armor that glistened like oil. Their helmets were long and narrow, with slits that glowed faint red. In their hands they carried strange weapons, long spears that hummed softly, as if alive. Daniel froze, his breath caught. These were no soldiers he had ever seen. They looked like shadows given form. The hunters spread out, their boots crunching the soil. They moved in silence, except for the faint hum of their weapons. Their red eyes swept across the night, searching, hunting. Lyra clutched the blanket tighter, her lips parted in fear. One of the hunters stopped. His head turned slowly, scanning the road. Daniel's chest pounded. He pulled Lyra behind a tree, pressing her against the bark, trying not to breathe too loud. The hunter stood still for a moment, as if listening, then his head snapped toward them. Daniel's heart dropped. He knows. The hunter raised his spear. The red glow from his visor grew brighter, and then, with a voice like broken glass, he spoke. "Give her." Daniel's blood turned cold. The sound was not human, but he understood the meaning. Lyra's body trembled against him. Her hand gripped his arm. "No," she whispered. Daniel swallowed hard. His instinct screamed at him to run, to leave her, to survive. But another voice inside him, quieter but stronger, told him to stay, to fight. The hunter took a step forward. His armored boots crushed the earth. Another hunter moved beside him, then another. Soon, 3 stood in the open road blocking the way. Their glowing eyes burned through the dark. "Give her," the first one said again. Daniel's legs felt heavy. His throat was dry. He had no weapon, no plan, only fear. Lyra looked at him. Her eyes were desperate, but also filled with something else. Trust. She whispered in her broken tongue, "You choose now." The words cut through him. He realized this was the moment. He could hand her over and save himself, or he could stand against monsters he had no chance of beating. For a heartbeat, he wanted to walk away. But then he remembered the cold night, her shivering body, the way she whispered, "Marked." He remembered that she had no one else left. Daniel's jaw tightened. He turned his head back toward the hunters. His voice shook, but he forced the words out. "No." The hunters tilted their heads. The red glow in their eyes pulsed brighter. The first hunter raised his spear, and the hum grew louder. Lyra clung to Daniel's arm. Her breath came fast. The forest went silent. The night held its breath. Then, in one swift motion, the hunter hurled his spear. Daniel reacted without thinking. He pulled Lyra down. The spear shot past them and slammed into the tree, burning through bark like fire through paper. Smoke rose from the wood. Daniel's eyes widened. If that had hit them, they would already be dead. The hunters began to advance, their steps heavy, their weapons glowing. Daniel's mind raced. He had nothing, no gun, no blade, no plan, only his body, his will. He grabbed Lyra's hand. "Run!" They stumbled through the trees, branches scratching their faces, roots pulling at their feet. Behind them, the hunters followed, silent, steady, unstoppable. Daniel's lungs burned, his heart hammered. Every step felt slower than the last. Lyra struggled beside him, her legs weak, but she refused to let go of his hand. Suddenly, the forest opened into a small clearing. The moonlight poured down, bright and silver. Daniel stopped, gasping for air. The hunters stepped out of the shadows surrounding the clearing. Their glowing eyes formed a ring. Daniel spun, searching for escape. There was none. Lyra pulled at his sleeve. Her voice was urgent. "Trust me." Daniel looked at her. Her face was pale, her body weak, but her eyes blazed with a strange light. "What are you going to do?" he asked. She clutched the blanket tight around her shoulders. "Not me, you." Before he could ask what she meant, the hunters raised their weapons in unison. The clearing filled with a low hum, the sound of death approaching. Daniel felt his knees weaken, but he also felt something else. Heat, faint but real, against his hand. The blanket. It was glowing again, brighter than before, wrapping Lyra like a shield. And through her, he felt it too. The hunters stepped closer, their shadows stretching across the ground. Daniel's breath caught. The moment had come. And for the first time that night, he was not sure if he was running from fate or stepping into it. The clearing was surrounded. The hunters stood like statues, their glowing red eyes locked on Daniel and Lyra. Their spears hummed louder, sharp tips glowing with strange energy. One strike would be enough to end them both. Daniel's hands trembled, but he refused to let go of Lyra's arm. He was no soldier, no fighter, just a man with nothing but courage and a thin hope that kindness still mattered. The blanket glowed brighter. Light spilled across the clearing, silver and soft, wrapping Lyra like a shield. Daniel felt the heat run through his fingers where he touched her. The hunters paused, their heads tilted slightly as if confused. Lyra's weak voice broke the silence. "It listens," she whispered. Daniel turned his head. "What listens?" She looked at him, her yellow eyes shining faintly. "The gift, the blanket. It listens to the heart. Yours." Daniel's stomach twisted. His heart? How could a piece of cloth listen to him? Yet, as the glow pulsed, he felt something, like the blanket was alive, reacting to him, answering his choice to protect her. The hunters did not wait long. One stepped forward, spear raised. His voice cracked like broken metal. "Give her now." Daniel's throat was dry. "No." The hunter's weapon snapped upward. Before the strike came, the glow around Lyra expanded in a sudden flash. It spread outward like a wave, knocking dust and leaves into the air. The hunter staggered back, his armor sparking against the light. Daniel's eyes widened. The blanket. It had done it again, protected them. Lyra swayed, weak from the effort, but she did not fall. She whispered through shallow breaths, "See, not only mine, it answers you too." Daniel swallowed hard. He did not understand it, but one thing was clear. The blanket was more than a cover for warmth. It was a bond, a connection between him and her. The hunters hissed through their helmets, angry. Their red eyes grew brighter. Then, without warning, they all moved at once. "Run!" Daniel shouted. He pulled Lyra, and together they dashed into the forest again. Branches whipped against their faces, roots caught their boots, but fear pushed them forward. Behind them, the hunters followed, silent and deadly. Daniel's chest burned as they ran. He could hear Lyra's ragged breathing, but she refused to slow. Her grip on his hand was tight, desperate. Finally, the forest broke open again, this time into a wider clearing filled with stones and old ruins. Strange carvings glowed faintly on the rocks, symbols Daniel did not recognize. Lyra stumbled, almost falling, but Daniel caught her. "What is this place?" he asked, gasping. Her eyes widened at the carvings. She touched one weakly with her hand. "Home. Once." Daniel blinked. "This was your people's?" She nodded slowly. "Long ago. Destroyed." The ruins felt heavy, filled with memories of lives erased. Daniel could almost feel the silence of the dead pressing around him. Before he could say more, the hunters arrived. They stepped from the trees, weapons glowing, their red eyes scanning the ruins. Daniel pulled Lyra behind a broken pillar, his chest heaving. "We can't keep running, they'll catch us." Lyra looked at him, her face pale but her voice steady. "We don't run, we trust." "Trust what?" Daniel whispered. Her hand moved to the blanket. She pulled it around him too, wrapping them both together under its glow. The warmth spread instantly, stronger than before, like fire and light moving through his veins. Daniel's heart raced, but not from fear. He felt something else, strength, courage, a strange calm. Lyra leaned against him. "Bond," she whispered. "Now we share. Now it listens more." The hunters drew closer. One raised his spear again, the red glow growing hot. Daniel's instincts screamed at him to run, but his body did not move. The blanket's light grew brighter, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. He stared at the hunters, his fear fading into something new. Defiance. The first spear shot forward, blazing like fire. Daniel raised his arm without thinking. The blanket's light surged outward, forming a shield of silver that caught the strike. Sparks flew, the air hummed, and the hunter's weapon was thrown back with a sharp crack. The hunters froze. For the first time, they looked uncertain. Daniel lowered his arm, his chest rising and falling fast. He had no idea how he had done it, but he knew one thing. The blanket had not just saved Lyra. It had saved him too. Lyra smiled weakly, her voice soft. "See, you are chosen now." Daniel stared at her, speechless. He had never believed in chosen ones or destiny. He had only believed in survival. But this girl, this moment, this bond, It was real. The hunters hissed louder, regrouping. They raised their spears again, ready to strike together this time. Daniel pulled Lyra closer, wrapping the blanket around them both. He whispered, half to her, half to himself. Then let's show them what this bond can do. The glow flared again, silver fire lighting the ruins. The hunters charged, and Daniel knew the battle was no longer hers alone. It was theirs. The ruins shook with the sound of clashing light. Daniel held the glowing blanket tight around himself and Lyra as the hunters circled. Their red eyes burned in the night, their weapons humming with deadly power. But before the hunters could strike again, the earth itself began to tremble. A low rumble rolled through the ground, shaking loose stones from the ruins. The hunters stopped. Even their glowing eyes turned toward the forest beyond. Daniel felt the vibrations under his boots, deep, heavy, steady. Something enormous was coming. Lyra's breath caught. She clutched Daniel's arm tightly. "It wakes," she whispered. "What wakes?" Daniel asked, his voice low and tense. She shook her head. "Guardian." From the shadows of the trees, the beast appeared. It was larger than any creature Daniel had ever seen. Its body towered like a living mountain, covered in thick black fur streaked with silver. 4 massive legs crushed the earth with every step, and its claws dug deep into the soil. Its head was wide, with burning golden eyes and teeth sharp as swords. The hunters shifted, their weapons rising, but they did not attack. They kept their distance. Even they feared it. Daniel's chest tightened. The beast's eyes locked on him. Its golden gaze burned through the night, fierce and ancient. Lyra's weak voice whispered at his side. "Guardian of my people. It tests. Only mercy tames it." Daniel's throat went dry. "Mercy?" She nodded slowly. "It does not obey strength. It obeys heart." The beast roared, the sound like thunder ripping the sky. The hunters stepped back, but Daniel stood frozen. The roar made his bones shake, but the blanket glowed brighter, as if urging him forward. Daniel swallowed hard. His instincts told him to run. His mind told him this was madness. But Lyra's words echoed inside. Only mercy. Slowly, Daniel stepped forward. The beast lowered its head, golden eyes locked on him. Its teeth glistened sharp and wet. Each step Daniel took felt heavier than the last, but the blanket's warmth kept him steady. Behind him, Lyra whispered again, "Show mercy, and it will bow." Daniel stopped just a few feet from the monster. He raised his hands, palms open, showing he held no weapon. His voice shook as he spoke. "I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to fight." The beast growled, the sound deep and rumbling. Its hot breath washed over him, smelling of earth and fire. It lowered its massive head closer, golden eyes staring straight into Daniel's soul. Daniel's body screamed with fear, but he held his ground. He reached out one shaking hand and touched the creature's snout. For a moment, silence. Then the glow from the blanket spread through his arm, into his hand, and onto the beast. The golden eyes widened. The growl stopped. The beast let out a low rumble, not of anger, but of something else. Slowly, carefully, it lowered its head to the ground. It bowed. Daniel's breath caught. His hand trembled against its fur, but he did not pull away. The giant beast had submitted to him. Behind him, Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "You proved," she whispered. "You showed mercy. You are worthy." The hunters hissed angrily. Their red eyes flashed, their weapons crackled. They had not expected this. The Guardian had chosen Daniel, and now they were outnumbered. The beast turned its massive head toward them and roared again, louder, stronger. The hunters staggered back, their armor shaking against the sound. Daniel stood tall, the blanket glowing brighter than ever. He felt no longer just a man. He felt part of something greater, tied to Lyra, to her people, to their history. But the hunters were not finished. One of them raised his spear, its red light cutting the dark. They would not retreat without blood. Daniel placed his hand again on the beast's snout. "Help us," he whispered. The beast roared once more and stepped forward. The ground cracked under its weight. The hunters froze, their weapons shaking in their hands. The Guardian's golden eyes burned with fire. It swung its massive claws, tearing the ground between them, a warning no hunter could ignore. The hunters hissed again, then slowly began to back away. Their red eyes dimmed as they disappeared into the forest shadows. The night fell silent once more. Daniel let out a long breath, his knees weak. He turned back toward Lyra. She was still leaning against the pillar, her face pale but her eyes shining with hope. "You did it," she whispered. "You passed the test." Daniel shook his head slowly. I don't even know how. Lyra smiled faintly. Not how. Why? You showed mercy. You gave when you could walk away. That is why the Guardian bows. Daniel looked at the massive beast, still kneeling before him. Its golden eyes no longer burned with fury, but with respect. For the first time that night, Daniel felt something strange. He was not just a man caught in a fight he didn't choose. He was part of a bond larger than himself. The hunters were gone, but he knew they would return. Lyra was still hunted, still marked. And now, so was he. But he no longer felt alone. The Guardian lifted its head, letting out a softer rumble, almost like a purr. Daniel's hand stayed on its fur, the blanket glowing faintly at his side. Lyra whispered, her voice filled with quiet strength. Now, the galaxy will see. A human walks with the Guardian. They will not forget. Daniel stared into the night sky above, stars burning bright through the clouds. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of destiny pressing on his shoulders, and he was ready to carry it. The Guardian stood tall in the ruins, its golden eyes glowing like fire. Daniel kept his hand pressed to its fur, feeling the deep rumble of its breath. Lyra leaned weakly against the broken stone, her blanket still glowing faintly around her shoulders. For a few moments, the night was calm. The hunters were gone, driven back by the beast. The forest was silent, as if even nature itself dared not disturb this moment. Daniel turned to Lyra. They'll be back, he said softly. Lyra nodded. Yes, they never stop. But now, she glanced at the Guardian. We are not alone. Daniel looked back at the towering creature. It had bowed to him once, recognizing mercy instead of violence. He still struggled to believe it. He was no warrior, no chosen savior. He was just a man who gave a cold girl a blanket. And yet, everything had changed. The Guardian let out a deep rumble, almost like a voice too ancient to form words. Daniel could feel it vibrating through his chest. Lyra smiled faintly. It accepts you, she whispered. You are marked, not by hunters, by hope. Before Daniel could reply, the trees shook again. Red eyes appeared in the dark. The hunters had returned. This time there were more of them. Dozens stepped into the ruins, their black armor glinting under the moon, their weapons humming like a swarm of angry bees. They had not given up. They had brought an army. Daniel's breath caught. His hands tightened on the blanket. There are too many. Lyra struggled to her feet. She stood beside him, her legs trembling, but her eyes bright with fire. Not if you believe. The hunters spread out, forming a circle around the ruins. Their leader stepped forward, taller than the rest, his armor sharper, his red eyes burning like coals. His voice rang through the air, cold and cruel. Human, he hissed. This is not your fight. Step away and live. Daniel's throat was dry. Every part of him wanted to turn back, to walk away. But then he looked at Lyra. He saw the trust in her eyes, the weight of her people's hope resting on her shoulders. She had no one left, and because of one small act of kindness, she had chosen him. Daniel's jaw tightened. He shook his head. No. The leader's red eyes blazed brighter. He raised his spear. Then you will die with her. The circle of hunters lifted their weapons. The air vibrated with deadly energy. Daniel pulled the blanket tighter around himself and Lyra. He whispered, "Stay with me." Lyra nodded, pressing her hand against his. The hunters moved as one. The Guardian roared. The ground shook, the ruins cracked, and the night split open with sound. The beast lunged, its golden eyes blazing, claws tearing the earth. Hunters scattered, their weapons flashing red against silver fur. Daniel felt the blanket's glow surge through him, stronger than ever. It wrapped around him and Lyra like a living shield. Spears of energy struck the light, but instead of piercing, they shattered like glass. Daniel raised his hand. The glow burst outward, a wave of silver fire spreading across the ruins. Hunters screamed, thrown back by the force. The leader staggered, his red eyes dimming under the blaze. Daniel stood tall, the blanket burning brighter than the moon. He had never felt such strength, yet it was not his alone. It was Lyra's. It was the bond. It was mercy, kindness, hope, all made into light. Lyra's voice rose above the chaos, weak but powerful. See him. A human shows what we could not. He gives when others only take. He protects when others only destroy. This is why we endure. The hunters faltered. For the first time, they hesitated. The Guardian roared again, its voice like a storm. The leader snarled, his voice cracking. This changes nothing. He raised his spear high. Daniel stepped forward, his eyes locked on the leader. No, it changes everything. He thrust his arm out. The blanket's light exploded, blinding and fierce. The ruins lit up like dawn. Hunters cried out, falling back into the shadows. Their red eyes flickered and vanished one by one until only darkness remained. The night was silent again. Daniel lowered his arm, his body trembling, the light fading slowly. The Guardian stood watch, its golden eyes calm once more. Lyra leaned against him, tears shining in her glowing eyes. You did it, she whispered. Daniel shook his head. We did it. The Guardian bowed its massive head again. Daniel stared, speechless, a creature of legend, kneeling before a simple human. He had no words. Lyra smiled through her tears. Now you are paying, Lord of my people, part of our story. Daniel looked out at the ruins, at the forest beyond, at the endless night sky filled with stars. For the first time, he felt the truth. His life was no longer his own. A single act of kindness had changed the course of two worlds. He whispered, almost to himself, I just gave you a blanket. Lyra touched his hand gently. Yes, and with it, you gave me hope. Daniel fell silent. He had no answer, no words, only awe. The hunters were gone. The Guardian stood by his side, and Lyra looked at him not with fear, but with trust, with faith. He was speechless, but in his silence, the galaxy itself was beginning to listen.